We all know that sleep is important. In fact, we spend a whopping 1/3 of our lives sleeping. And this would be the most ridiculous evolutionary mistake unless, for some reason, it was vital for our survival and well-being. Indeed, as we now know, sleep has a variety of different functions. And perhaps the most prominent one is memory consolidation, the process of making freshly created memories stronger, stabilizing them, and transferring to long-term storage. And if you've ever tried to learn your entire curriculum in one night, don't do it by the way, you'll know what I'm talking about. How does this happen that after you wake up after a good night's sleep, the material you learned the day before magically becomes more clear and you remember it better? I mean, you're literally lying, not doing anything. You're not reading, listening, or otherwise consuming the information. So let's find out. Our brains work in such a way that the most effective approach to learn anything is through practice and active engagement with the material. This is where our today's sponsor, Brilliant, comes into play. Brilliant is a platform for such hands-on interactive learning. They offer a variety of courses in math, life, and computer sciences. The key feature of Brilliant is combining really clear, intuitive explanations of the theory with the chance to deepen that knowledge through solving real problems and engaging with interactive demonstrations and examples. I'm currently taking the course on artificial neural networks, and I've gotta say that this approach really does make a difference, and it provides a new layer of a more deep, intuitive understanding. You might also be interested in the course on computational biology, which combines key concepts from math, physics, and computer science, providing you with a chance to apply these fields to the study of living organisms, starting from the very basics and working the way up to more complicated topics like stochastic protein folding. If you want to join the fast-growing community of active learners, Brilliant has a special offer. By using this link, you can get started on Brilliant's interactive courses for free, and the first 200 people will also get a 20% discount on annual membership. My name's Artem. I'm a computational neuroscience student and researcher. Here we talk about the brain, both the theory of how it works under the hood, as well as practice of how to study and learn more effectively. If you're interested, consider subscribing to the channel not to miss anything. Before we begin our journey on memory and sleep, let's meet the two key players that would be particularly important. The first one is the cortex, the executive center of the brain, where all of the thinking happens. It's a place for your memories, thoughts, and language. You can think of the cortex as a warehouse or a huge library. And the second key component is the hippocampus, a loopy structure that lies in the depths of the brain and has extensive connections to the cortex. Now, hippocampus plays a role of the librarian. It puts newly arriving books at according shelves and restructures the existing library. And this back and forth communication between the hippocampus and the cortex is of special interest, accounted for the bulk of memory consolidation. It's important to understand that even though our bodies lie still during sleep, the brain does not shut down. Instead, its neurons constantly fire up with its own internally generated activity. Unlike the body, the brain doesn't rest. It just shifts gears and enters a new mode of operation. This is called offline brain state. To better understand what happens inside the brain during such periods, let's first look at the usual online state of the brain during the day. Let's consider a lab mouse. At daytime, as it's running around and exploring the environment, signals flow from the cortex to the hippocampus. It receives sensory information and performs computations required for efficient spatial navigation and the construction of cognitive maps. We have already discussed this aspect of hippocampus in the previous video of the series, so if you haven't seen this one, go check it out because we will build up from there. Hippocampal position-sensitive neurons, or place cells, fire in sequence, encoding the path the animal traverses. Now, let's turn off the lights and see what happens inside the brain of a sleeping mouse. The key idea is that at night, this dominant information flow from the cortex to the hippocampus would be reversed. Now the hippocampus would step in and become the primary sender. But this messaging up to the cortex doesn't happen continuously. Instead, hippocampus sends information in discrete units, kind of like data packets. These events have a very peculiar and characteristic shape when they are detected on the underlying electrical activity of the brain. If you stick an electrode inside the mouse hippocampus while it's sleeping, the recorded signal would have certain bursts of activity, kind of like little hippocampal fireworks. The overall activity would suddenly go up and then decrease like a wave. And on top of this wave would be a very high frequency oscillation, kind of like a ripple on the water surface. This is why such events were called sharp wave ripples. And ever since these hippocampal explosions were discovered, they posed a question for researchers. At first, they were hypothesized to play a role in memory, because when the mouse was placed in a novel environment, the rate at which sharp wave ripples occur the following night increased compared to the familiar environment. But more convincing evidence came later, when it was discovered that artificially silencing the sharp wave ripples, that is, interrupting this activity from happening, leads to a slower rate of learning and a decreased performance. And this is direct evidence that these hippocampal fireworks, whatever their nature is, are actually markers for the process of memory consolidation. But what exactly happens in the brain during these sharp wave ripples? Well, advances in technology allowed us to look at the spike content of the ripple, and that is, what exact neurons are firing and in what order. And this is perhaps the most exciting feature of the sharp wave ripple. Remember how during the day, place cells were firing in sequence, representing the trajectory. In fact, each spatial memory, such as the event of running through the maze and getting the reward, can be thought of as a sequence of activating place cells firing one after another in well-defined order, encoding the taken path. If you compare the activity of place cells during the daytime at times of active foraging with their activity during sleep the following night, you will see something very interesting. Trajectories the mouse was taking during the day, at night recapitulated during the sharp wave ripple. And that means that the same place cells were activating one after another as if representing the same trajectory. Only their order was reversed, and the timescale of the entire thing was much smaller. It's as if the mouse brain was rewinding back the mental tape. This phenomenon was given the name hippocampal replay, or fast reverse replay to be exact. As we now believe, such reverse replay of a particular event is what plays the major role in consolidating the memory about it. Ordered reactivation of place cells, representing past trajectories, is what helps to strengthen the synaptic connections between the nerve cells, encoding this particular memory in the cortex. Now, it's important to understand that replay and the sharp wave ripple is not exclusively a nighttime event. Yes, they are most abundant during the slow wave or deep sleep, when there is a process of active consolidation going on. But they can also be observed at daytime, especially during periods of immobility. For example, as the mouse successfully finds its way through a maze to a tasty reward and happily sits down to enjoy it, the hippocampus fires up a replay of that path's place cell sequence to consolidate this memory and better find the route next time. But sometimes you would see really weird ripples whose content doesn't correspond to any of the past experience. Instead, place cell firing sequences encode the path the animal would take in the near future, after the ripple was observed. And when that route was taken, you'd see that, unlike reverse replay, place cells firing in this ripple were arranged in the correct order as they would be firing during the run, from start to finish. This led to the hypothesis that hippocampus uses this preplay, or fast-forward replay, in decision-making for planning the future actions. It is now clear that the two types of replay, forward versus reverse, serve two different functions. For example, changing reward only has effect on reverse replays, but not the forward ones. Yet, the two types of replay are very similar phenomena. In fact, almost certainly they are two sides of the same coin. You can see how there is this beautiful process of mental time travel carried out by your own personal time machine, the hippocampus. It can go backwards in time, recapitulating past experiences in reverse order to reevaluate and consolidate them, or it can fast forward into the near future to consider the different possibilities. To me, this mechanism is absolutely elegant. Of course, we are still yet to uncover more details about this process and exact physiological mechanisms, but this is a very big step towards understanding the general computational logic behind the brain's mysterious activity. So hopefully next time you're faced with a dilemma to keep cramming before the exam or peacefully go to sleep, you will remember about the wonders of consolidation and let the hippocampus rewind the tape.